maintaining privacy in the decentralized world.
Yes, let's start with a round of intros, starting from Alan.
Yes, hi. So I'm Alan Mamo, manager at the BDO, Technology and Advisory Services. We work a bit on blockchain, privacy and IT audit, amongst the many other services of BDO.
Thank you. Austin?
My name's Austin Spencer. I'm the CEO of Defy Development Corp. We've launched over 100 different NFT and token projects, and I've gone from finance to being a WWE wrestler, and now to blockchain.
Now launching DeFi projects. Richard?
Yeah, and for me, I'm basically a DeFi degen with a background in security auditing.
A self-admitting DeFi degen. Respect, my friend, respect. At least they know, right? At least they know.
Yeah, and basically now do mostly tokenomics consulting, also implementation for DeFi projects. Yeah.
Cool. So, guys, this is a very special panel. I think we're going to talk about something which is very, very close to my heart, which is privacy. I think it's something which is inherently interesting to, I think, most people who've been in the Web3 space for a while, right? Maybe excluding the DeFi degens or including, we'll see, we'll find out at the end of this panel, right? But one of the, I guess, greatest concerns with anything blockchain, anything crypto is the world at large think, everything's anonymous. This stuff is only used for drugs and only like illicit transactions, right? But and in some ways, yes, it's true. There's a lot of illicit activity and there is anonymity, but there is also identity, right? So the question here is, how do we balance anonymity and privacy at the same time? So I want to dive into actually, before we dive into specific tech, what are your individual views on anonymity and privacy? Let's start from there.
Basically, I think privacy is very, very important. It should be a right. Should be a right to everybody to, remain private and keep their data private. So, and this, of course, is at odds with probably like how a government would view it. That you have to be as open as possible with anything. And I think like the most important thing is like to find a way that you're somehow able to bridge the gap between the two maximalist viewpoints and find some common ground. Yeah.
Austin?
Absolutely, great point about the government. It just depends on, how our government's going to respond. You got to find the common ground at that point. I agree with you.
Alan?
Yes, I think, as you mentioned in the previous panel, I think with the GDPR, there was a large growth, especially I can say, obviously, in Malta and in the EU, a large growth on the focus of privacy. Before we had the Data Privacy Act, which was kind of just out there and people were hardly aware of it. And there were like those one fine of 10,000 and that's it. So I think it's brought a lot into the space, and it's very important because everyone values their privacy and maybe everyone doesn't know how companies handle it. So it's always imperative to have it in mind, and GDPR really brought it as a focus for everyone.
Yeah. So we all agree that privacy is important. That's a good start. Okay. Hopefully we start disagreeing at some point. This becomes a bit more interesting. But let's talk about zero knowledge proofs specifically. How can we leverage ZK to enable, I guess, a fair equilibrium between anonymity and privacy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are dozens of use cases, I'd say.
Give me one.
For example, if you look at electronic health, like at some point I audited the German electronic patient record, and so like a huge problem there was basically to do like the role in access management, for the basically like healthcare providers, insurance providers, patients themselves, doctors, whatever. How do you manage the entire system? And so if you were to build something up using basically ZK privacy,
Yeah.
one would have an even better way to manage it, because like with the legacy system, you would still have like a centralized attack vector, like having some admin or whoever that can basically open up the entire system. But with with ZK, you would be able to do like the role and access management and stuff like that with without the attack vector.
So what you're saying is, in a situation where somebody is accessing services in a hospital,
Mhm.
they could, each individual can access a service. The hospital would know that they are an authorized individual
Mhm.
that's accessed it without ever knowing which specific person that
Yeah.
was, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
how would that help in a real life a situation? What specific problem would it solve?
I mean, like the basic problem it solves is that that if you're not willing to share information, you're able to do that. So look at it from this point. Like probably in the maybe this is also because I'm a Defy degen, but like I don't really see the problem of a doctor being able to access my entire record without. I don't have a problem with that, but there's like other use cases where it certainly can be beneficial not to reveal your entire history. Like I'll
come back to this example
Yeah.
soon. But guys, do you want to chime in?
Yes, I think, as you mentioned, with zero knowledge, what you're doing basically is you're covering the underlying data, right? And you're only giving the information which you want to give.
Sure.
And that's the key thing, right? We say, I mentioned privacy because obviously, and GDPR because that's a key thing which I work in. And we talk a lot, it's one of the principles of GDPR, which is data minimization, right? So it's
Sure.
only using and processing the information that you need. The less information you give, obviously, the better in the space of privacy. So it's very, very important and good to use.
Absolutely. Austin, any feedback?
Absolutely, totally agree. You're able to give the information that you want to give. And then also, like you were mentioning as well, the medical example, well, obviously, I'm fine with the doctor having as much, all of the information, right? So,
Yeah.
excellent example.
Yeah. So on the medical side, I'll give you a real life example. So Germany, for example, still uses paper-based passports for the most part. They've also got one of the most stringent data privacy requirements on medical information I think that exists out there. And the reason is, if that information was publicly available, should the wrong circumstances make themselves a reality, there could be a repeat of 1940, right?
Yeah. And
So using ZK would be a key solution to such a problem, right?
Mm. It's also it's this, of course, but also, of course, you would open up yourself to attack vectors by other states. Like, just imagine like a country that is like at war with you being able to access all of your all of the health data of your people, of your citizens, basically. So it's also like on a geopolitical level an attack vector that you don't want to have.
That's a really good point. So like it could literally prevent like some kind of biological warfare, right?
Yeah.
Hey, maybe if we had this in 2020 would have been a bit different. But let's jump into the risks, I guess, right? Like the risks, not from a sort of governmental side, but maybe go into the risks for me on an identity use case, or like what risks do you see of implementing zero knowledge in real life situations? Because obviously there's many positives, right? What are the risks?
I think if I can say, one of the risks is probably cross-border transactions. So obviously having different jurisdictions working with the same data, and obviously alignment with the different jurisdictions. We know geopolitical issues, right? That's kind of becoming a real deal and a big problem. So it definitely could reduce the risk in there.
Absolutely, guys.
I mean, I would always say that there are always risks, but like I think the biggest risks are just with the implementation of such a system. Not necessarily the technology itself. I mean, I could also always say like there's probably like children illnesses in this technology still. So for now, probably like the biggest issues would be, hey, how do you do the key recovery? Because once it's encrypted in there and you lose access to your key, then like those are the risks. But those are just risks because we haven't yet developed like the entire processes behind it, like key recovery. Like we have developed it already, but nobody's using it properly. So I think like we have to mitigate those issues first, but I think that in the future this will be like a staple technology stack where you will look at the current PKI, public key cryptography systems, where you're like, oh, okay, probably we would just go with ZK from the start. Like at least that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean it's no secret that this is very nuanced tech, right? And there are, I think, a handful of sort of real life use cases running on ZK now. So to your point, we have to sort of break a few eggs to make an omelette, right? And we've just cracked one or two. It's still super very early. You know what I mean?
Very, very early, yeah.
So what do you think really needs to happen for there to be some kind of mainstream breakout adoption? Is the answer something on the regulatory side? Is that going to be a business driver from the private sector? Like how
private capital solves everything.
Okay. Say more words.
There's a lot of people out there that are working on this problem already, right? I mean, I've got high faith in this community, meeting so many different people. Again, I know people personally who are already working on it. And like anything, when it's in its infancy, we're going to see those solutions. My big thing is don't find an excuse, find a solution. And there's people out there working on it right now.
Absolutely. That's I guess, particularly American way to look at that kind of love. Actually.
I'm not American. I'm Canadian.
Canadian. Come on now. Northern American. Oopsies. So I've screwed up on, let's say, geopolitics here today and a few other things. But I guess I'll blame the hangover. So apologies.
Means it was a good night. Another good one tonight, or what?
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm more concerned with my privacy at the moment, to be honest. But,
you weren't last night.
You haven't seen the photos, bro.
Send them to me afterward.
Yeah. All right, guys. So talk to me about the regulatory side of the privacy world. Yes, we have GDPR, and GDPR does things for traditional centralized system, and it does them in a good way. As far as blockchain goes and decentralized systems, that's sort of out of scope, right? Of what the sort of general outline was. What are the gaps and how do we fill them?
I think what with GDPR at least they kind of tackled it not in a let's focus on system based and the way that things currently are. They have a set of principles and they approach the regulation with principles. So then you can apply them obviously to whatever technology you're addressing, right? So I think it's not that it has to change as much, but I think it has to evolve a bit as well as we go about it. So there might be maybe some updates to the regulation itself, but I think it was made in such a way that it's a bit future-proof. Obviously not endlessly future-proof, but yes, it was built in that manner. So I don't think too many changes would be required. It might be a bit more on the technology itself, though, that might help.
Because I think the biggest issue right now is that the GDPR basically forces you to not to store the data somewhere. And like even if you're using like a ZK file system, whatever, to store the data, it would, even though it is encrypted, it would still be stored somewhere. And so even though then if you have this ZK encrypted data and you would provide a proof of ownership of the data, then basically you would still not comply with GDPR, even though you achieve one of the main intentions behind the GDPR. Yeah.
Yes, in fact, I think you're modeling on retention, right? Data retention. So when we talk about retention, it's not just about having the data and then deleting it, because as you're saying, it's not always possible, right? It's ideal, but it's not always a scenario that you can take. So maybe instead we look at two other options, which are pseudonymization and anonymization, right? Which is either hashing, encrypting the data and throwing away the keys, essentially, right? So you can keep the statistical data if you'd like, and throw away the rest, or you can just totally encrypt the data, make it unreachable by anyone else, and you can consider the data then unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those I think are sort of two different technical solutions to two different real world problems. But and I love the contrast you made, or not the contrast really, but the juxtaposition, I guess, between GDPR and ZK, because they sort of work together in some ways, but they're sort of opposing forces in others, So and to your point, GDPR was I mean, okay, I crap on it and stuff, but it was a kind of forward thinking law, right? But there's still a lot to do to accomplish on the regulatory side for things like ZK, for things like for things like ZK and things like decentralization, right? That my question is with things with news evolving every day. This snark works. That one's terrible. Use this hash. Use that hash. How can a regulator who arguably doesn't have the sort of knowledge base of the panel today, how can they keep ahead of a challenge like this,
themselves,
right? And how would they do that?
I think they need to engage with technical experts, right? Because that's the only way you can do it. Without them having the knowledge, they're not going to be able to achieve anything. So they have to engage with people like people on this panel, people who know their stuff, companies who are working in that space, and then they'll be able to take the conversation further.
They have to have a desire to get out and do it too, and speak to the right people.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're not going out and not having the desire to do it, it's not going to happen. And then anyone here with the knowledge is able to talk to regulators. They need to be a representative of the community, right? And to be able to be somebody that is welcoming, open. And that's a great thing about our whole community. I mean, I've met so many people here today that are so open, welcoming, getting different perspectives, and we all share similar viewpoints. It's amazing. So if we can be welcoming on the regulation and educating those people and giving them a positive experience, then they're going to have a positive view of the whole industry, how we can move forward together. Maybe
you should start inviting these authorities to our panels as well.
Hey, I mean, I was just on the...
That's a great idea.
Hey, I just had a chat with Martin from Meta, and actually his sort of perspective shocked me, actually, because he embraced exactly what you guys are talking about, right? There has to be the interest. If there isn't the interest, it's like you're flogging a dead horse, Justin Trudeau style. Got that one right, though.
Oh, don't even get me started on that guy.
Woo! So, closing remarks on privacy in the world of decentralization. What do you think would be the next big challenges for the coming 2 years?
KYC, basically on the blockchain, I'd say. So basically you do the KYC process, maybe get like an NFT issued that is soul-bound and basically can interact with dApps or other whatever on the blockchain.
Perfect. Our company will write the code for it.
Okay.
Alan?
No, I think for me it's basically what you were saying. It's getting the authorities on board, getting everyone together, and just having one common ground, and then tackling it from there.
So basically, if we can connect the authorities with some kind of ZK digital identity solution, the world will be a fantastic place. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to the audience. Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.